The line must be drawn here. Oh shit, sorry. God damn it, wrong first contact. Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review of First Contact, which is episode 15 of season 4 of Star Trek The Next Generation. It's the episode called First Contact, not the movie, just to be clear. Anyway, this video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Next Generation, one episode at a time. In this video, I cover the 4th season episode, First Contact. So First Contact is the episode where we follow a race of aliens as apparently they are just about to discover warp drive and have no contact of any other alien species other than their own, but Riker was there investigating them when he got caught in a riot and had to go in the hospital, and they discover an alien and it freaks them out. Meanwhile, Picard and Troy make first contact with the scientist in charge of the warp program, who in turn tells the chancellor of the planet about Picard, who they start negotiations. However, those negotiations take a downturn when the Chancellor discovers Commander Riker and that they were under surveillance, and this leads the security minister, who's quite conservative and traditionalist, to be very suspicious of the Enterprise and crew and suspect an invasion, so much so that he even tries to kill himself and make it look like Riker killed him. However, Riker's able to put the phaser on stun so he doesn't die, and Crusher's able to save them both finally, and is able to make the determination that he was just pretending to be shot. And so the Chancellor realized that Riker wasn't responsible, but took it as a sign that his planet was not ready for first contact, and so asked Picard and the Enterprise to leave and never return because they're simply not ready to reveal that there's another alien species out there. However, the lead scientist of the war program asked to stay on the Enterprise, and Picard grants that wish. Alright, so I'm going to start out by being a bit controversial yet again. Now, by saying that I think this episode's overrated, and apparently I say that a lot, but I will cover that in another video when I get to a different Patreon comment. But apparently I always say something's over or underrated. I didn't realize this, but anyway, this is overrated. Now, I don't think it's terribly overrated because I wouldn't put it in my top 10 most overrated episodes of the Star Trek franchise, because it wasn't there, and I think that's correct. It shouldn't be there because it's not one of the most overrated, because to be fair, I don't think this episode's rated that highly. Like, it doesn't make like everyone's top 10 list or anything like that. But apparently, I watched a video that mentioned that this episode makes a lot of top 10 lists, which I have not noticed myself personally, but I'll take their word for it. But I have seen everyone who has reviewed or covered this episode or wrote an article about it being very positive on it and giving it like a 9 out of 10 and saying it's an amazing episode. And honestly, I never really liked this episode. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it sucks. I don't think it's horrible. I don't think it's one of the worst episodes, but it's mediocre at best, in my opinion. And one of the biggest issues I've had with this episode is, again, going to be controversial because it's what most people state on why they like the episode, and in fact it's why I don't like the episode. And I know a ton of people are going to disagree with me on this one, but hey, I'm here to give my honest opinion. I'm not here to sugarcoat things or to placate everyone else's opinion. Regardless of how much you might disagree with it, I'm here to give my honest opinion, and my honest opinion is I do not like the fact that this episode takes the perspective of the aliens. I think it's very, pardon the term, alienating. Sorry. But it alienates me as an audience. I feel like I've entered this episode like halfway through the story by doing that, by the fact that they start with Riker going to the hospital. And alright, so let me make myself clear, because I actually don't hate the fact that we take the perspective of the aliens. I hate the fact that we start halfway through the story. And I have a fix, something that I think would have fixed this problem for me. Just a humble suggestion. Something that would have made me accept this episode more. And again, I'm sure everyone's going to disagree with this, but again, this is how I feel. I feel like if they began the teaser with Riker beaming down, dressed, in the garb and the cosmetics, dressed as the alien, the Mintakans, the Mintakans was Who Watches the Watcher. It's like something else and starts with an M. I don't care. But anyway, if he was dressed as one of them, you see him beam down. He goes to the Federation scientists already there, and they outline, this is the thing, you gotta evacuate us because there's these riots going on. And Riker's like, okay, let's get you out of here. Let's, they have to walk somewhere first before they can beam or something. They have to retrieve another scientist or some information. I don't know. And then the riots happen, and they get caught up in the riots, and Riker gets seriously injured, and the scientists can't find him and get pushed away. And then we see them call to the Enterprise saying, "Oh no, Riker's been injured. We don't know where he is." And then we see Picard on the Enterprise going, "Oh no, we can't find Riker," and it goes dun dun dun, and then credits come on, the Next Generation, credits, and after the credits, then we follow the perspective of the aliens. Now, I know some people might not like this because it breaks the format, because it starts off with showing the perspective of the Starfleet officers, but I think to me, that would have been acceptable, though, because it's not so much that we follow the perspective of the aliens I mind. It's that I feel lost, and I feel like I'm joining the story halfway through. And had they had that opening scene, you can have one scene, just have one opening scene, just to orientate the audience, just to orientate me, because that scene would have made it very clear what was going on. It would be Riker on the planet. They're, helping out these aliens, and we see what actually happened to Riker. As the episode stands, we have no fucking idea why Riker was caught up in some riots. It's just some vague, they just passed it up some vague bullshit. Oh, who cares? He's in the hospital now. Who cares how he got there? That's bullshit. We need to know. We need to see that on screen. Now, if you're saying, Next Generation didn't have that huge of a budget, they couldn't really film a scene like that. Sure, they could. There's ways around it. Even on the budget they had, there's ways around it to film a scene like that shows Riker getting caught in his riot, and then we understand what's going on. So then they can have the next scene after we come back from the credits can start exactly as the episode starts. We see Riker being skirted into the hospital, then we fully understand what's going on, and then from then on out, we take the perspective of the aliens. So the rest of the episode can play exactly as the episode plays, and I would like it maybe way better. I would like it 25% better if they did it this way. Now, as I said with all my disclaimers, I am certain that everyone's going to disagree with me on this one, but this is my stance. I think I think the way it is, I have no attachment to these aliens. I'm like, who the fuck are they? Why the fuck is Riker down there? And sure, as the episode goes on, they do disseminate this information, but I'm stuck with that feeling that I had from the start of the episode of going, I don't give a shit about these aliens. I don't give a shit about Riker's situation because it seems like it came out of nowhere. It seems like I'm joining the story halfway through. Seems like I'm reading a book. I just open it to page 50 and skip past the first 50 pages and started on page 50. That's what it feels like to me. Now, again, everyone and their mother can disagree with me. I don't care. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to say, well, that scene you're talking about, Mark, is totally unnecessary. They don't need to have it. You can figure this out. The reason why I think it's necessary is not because I need to be spoon-fed, like, exactly what's going on. That's because I need to be eased into the plot. I need to be introduced to these characters. And I feel like the way it begins does not introduce me to the characters, just throws it in my face and be like, here, deal with it. And I don't like that. I don't like that kind of storytelling. I like to be introduced to what's going on. And so I never felt a connection with these characters throughout the rest of the episode. I didn't really give a shit about them. There's a conservative asshole. There's a scientist lady. There's a pragmatic leader. But none of them felt real and tangible to me. And especially the bullshit going on at the hospital. How there was the typical, stereotypical asshole guy. Oh, let's kill the alien. And then, don't even get me started about fucking that character who insisted on having sex with Riker. We're like, what the hell was that? That is a common complaint I did hear about this episode that many people have stated. That seems out of nowhere, and it seems like it's there for comedy, which is in stark contrast to the rest of the episode, which is really serious. And all of a sudden she's like, oh, well, I'll only help you escape if you'll have sex with me. And that's a bit problematic. She's kind of, I mean, some people would define that as rape, forcing Riker, like coercing him into having sex with her, saying, the only way I'm going to help you escape, which is you need to escape in order to survive, so basically I'm going to let them, put your survival on the line of whether or not you'll have sex with me. You see how fucked up that is? Like, and also imagine if we swapped gender roles and it was a woman who was in the hospital trying to get out, and a male comes and like, oh, I'll help you get out, but only if you'll fuck me. Like, I think people would realize even more how fucked up that is. But anyway, and they play it for comedy, which is fucked up in itself. And not just that, like, if you have no qualms about the whole her demanding Riker have sex with her, I mean, you might be like, oh, but Riker always bangs chick. But he made it very clear, like, he's injured, he's in pain, he's fighting for his survival. He's not in the fucking mood, and basically he's being coerced. It doesn't matter how much of a bimbo Riker is normally. In this situation, he doesn't want to do it, and he's being coerced. But anyway, but yeah, even if you don't have a problem with that, it's the stark change in tone is an issue. Just looking at it from, let's do this silly, lighthearted bullshit in the middle of, and it's unnecessary. In fact, I read somewhere that scene was purposely created just to give, what's her name, who played Lilith on Cheers, played Frasier's wife, or ex-wife, on Cheers and Frasier, just to give her a role. Like, that role was specifically created for her. So it's like they probably, someone had the idea, this actor wants to cameo on your next episode, and someone's like, okay, let's just write in some bullshit about her asking to have sex with Riker. It's completely useless and dumb. But anyway, again, I'm going to say some, controversial things that other people may disagree with me on. But I think there's several future Star Trek episodes that did this better than this episode. There's Civilization, from Star Trek Enterprise, which I actually did a review from recently because I did these polls and I covered that episode. And in that review, I mentioned how I thought it was better than the First Contact episode, which may sound odd coming from me because I'm very critical of season 1 of Enterprise. I've been clear that's one of my least favorite seasons of the show. But that episode is actually one of the episodes from that season I actually kind of like and I actually think is halfway decent. I certainly think it has the dull characters of Enterprise, so it comes off a bit more dull. But it's a tighter script, and I think it works better. First of all, they don't do this bullshit where they're throwing you in halfway through the story. You follow it from the very beginning. I buy Archer's romance with what's her face, who was there on the Rian or something like that, who was on the planet. I buy that way more than I buy Riker's bullshit with Lilith, or even the Marasta, scientist character. I think the character in Civilization was way more developed, and I found it a more interesting scenario that there's these villains from another species trying to use their primitive planet as a dumping ground for their toxic waste, and that's killing them, and how Archer fights them off. To me, that's more interesting than this bullshit. And then there's the episode Strange New Worlds from the show Strange New Worlds. It was the first episode of Strange New Worlds, and I've been on record saying I really, really like that episode, and I've heard a lot of other people saying, yeah, it's okay, it's kind of mediocre, and saying it wasn't that good of a start for a series. I believe, if I am remembering this correctly, when I did my top 10 favorite premiere episodes of each Star Trek series, that this was my number 1. I think it was. And it's also a similar situation where they're making First Contact, but it's a lot more complex because this alien species definitely isn't ready for First Contact, and they mistook a warp bomb for warp drive, but they were actually making weapons that they got the idea to due to whatever BS happened at the end of Discovery Season 2, and so it was kind of Pike's fault, and so he had to go in and fix his mess, and eventually he did that by just driving the Enterprise right up to their buildings when no one thought that would exist, and being like, hi, and beaming down in the middle of their thing, and showing them pictures of January 6th and whatnot, saying, no, Earth fucked up very badly as well, and you guys are going down that same path, and I'm trying to stop you. I love that. I think that was way better than this episode. Way better. So those are my hot takes. Now, as for the rest of the episode, as I said, I didn't hate it. I don't think it sucked. It was just kind of bland. I never got that interested in it, as I said, because I never really felt connected to any of the characters. I do like some of the interactions, though, between the scientist, what was her name, Marasta, and the Chancellor, what's his face, and Picard. I think those scenes were really good. It got to show Picard being at his most diplomatic, but I didn't really like the Riker stuff, the stuff on the planet because they were cliche asshole guy and the other I don't know, they felt like cartoon characters. They didn't feel like real characters in the hospital, except for maybe the hospital administrator, because his behavior was kind of like a surrogate for me, or a surrogate for the audience, where he was like, why are you guys being such morons? Come on now. That's what I'm thinking. But then, and I like the scene towards the end where that asshole security guy comes in and wants him to give Riker drugs that might kill him, and he's like, well, I don't care what else he is, but ultimately what he is a patient in my hospital, and I have made an oath to do no harm, and I don't care if the Chancellor himself showed up here and told me to do it. I am not going to do it. And then that, asshole security guy, of course, was like, then I'll find someone to replace you. Like, that's actually a good scene. I actually like that. I like the way the administrator takes the stand for that. And of course, they get that other asshole guy to replace him. Of course, he's going to pump Wrecker full of drugs. But I don't really like that security guy. I mean, he's definitely a stand-in. And I'm sorry if you're offended by this, but it's fucking obvious to anyone with eyes. He is definitely a stand-in for conservative traditionalists. He's definitely representing the more conservative side of like a fundamentalist religious side. And so he's realistic, especially if this culture is meant to be like our culture, which it is. So he's realistic, but, I hate those people in real life, so I would hate them in this show. But, oh, God, I can't stand that guy. Oh, Chancellor, blah, blah, blah. But, as I said, it doesn't come off as mustache twirly, which apparently is another catchphrase I say a lot. But he doesn't come off as mustache twirly, and he doesn't come off as, two-dimensional. I can buy him, I just don't like him. But I'm not meant to like him, that's the point, so he serves the purpose well. So yeah, as I said, I like that scene at the end. I like the scene where Picard is like going back and forth with the Chancellor, and the Chancellor, I think he's being reasonable actually by saying, most conquerors come and visit people with the term, we are your friends. And I think he's right to sort of be a bit distrustful of Picard, and I love the way Picard sort of soft pedals this, and it's like when he's like, well, what happens if our interests conflict? And he's like, there will be no conflict, I will do whatever you want to do. He's like, okay, what if I tell you to leave and never return? He's like, then we'll leave and never return. Like, so it was I love Picard's like negotiating skills. I thought it was quite good. Something I didn't realize until just recently when I watched a couple of videos, it was pointed out to me. I never made this connection in my head. But Picard, pours some wine for the Chancellor. And it's like, I'd like to propose a toast. And it's like, these come from something called grapes on my planet. And my brother cultivates them and makes this wine. I don't know why, but for some reason it never connected to me that this was the exact same bottle that Robert gave Picard at the end of Family. Where, if you remember the end of Family, when Picard leaves to go back to the Enterprise, Robert gives Picard this bottle of wine as a gift, and he says something like, can't remember exactly what he says, but he's like, make sure you don't drink this alone. And Picard doesn't. He shares it with this Chancellor dude. So I don't know why that should have connected. That's the same bottle that he gave him. Because he even says it outright. Oh, my brother gave me this bottle. And I don't know why that never registered that it was the exact same bottle from Family. But anyway, so I like that sense of continuity. I did like the Marasta character. As I said, she was a good sort of open-minded and sort of the more open-minded scientific type, and how she was accepting to Picard instantly, because she was I don't think she was naive. I think she was more sort of less suspicious, I would say, and because she was correct to trust Picard. So I think she was a good read of character. Like, for example, if Romulans or Cardassians showed up and oh yeah, no, we're definitely here to help you, I think she would have been able to see through them. She would have been like, no, you're full of shit. But so I don't think it's the case that she was so willing to believe the aliens were good guys she would believe anything. I think that she was a good judge of character, and she could see plainly that Picard and Troy were laying it all out there and being completely honest. That's what I think. I honestly think if a Cardassian showed up and was like, no, we're totally here to help you, she would not buy it. That's just my impersonation, though. Um, Now I heard a lot of people complain about the fact that Marasta decided to stay on the Enterprise, and I understand the reasoning, because the reasoning is that um, the planet's not ready yet, because people are still naive and they still are fearful of aliens, and so she should stay behind to help push that the people in the right direction. And with her leaving, that means it might be even longer until this planet's ready. But I actually disagree with that, and a lot of people are complaining about the fact of why the Chancellor dude, or why Picard let her stay behind, saying that they shouldn't have. I'm like, no, fuck it. If she wants to stay, let her fucking stay. And here's the thing, and this is what the Chancellor said, and I think a lot of people are kind of missing this point, is that he has to curtail the warp program, which is the main thing. Like, that was her main. She's not a sociologist. She's not a politician. She's a scientist, and her main field of study was the warp drive. And with him nixing that, and in fact nixing the whole space program, she would feel frustrated. She would have nothing to do, and in fact, the Chancellor guy made it clear it could be a very, very long time, and it wouldn't be her place to help the people forward. In other words, she wouldn't really have a place in that society. Some other people, maybe she could support the other peoples, but some other people, more politicians or public figures, might be able to push the culture in the right direction. But she is a scientist, so she wants to be a scientist, and it was her dream, as she tells Picard, I've been ready to go into space since I was a little girl. So it's something she was dreaming of, something she wanted more than anything. And I think it would have been a complete dick move of Picard to deny her that dream, especially when the Chancellor gave her wishes. And I think it totally makes sense that he agreed to this as well, because he knows that he would have to put all these restrictions on her that she would fucking hate, and that she would not have a good time returning to a planet. And so why the fuck would they deny her these dreams? Now, this is another situation like Barash, where someone at the end of the episode, someone's like, oh, you can come on board the Enterprise, and then we never see of them or hear of them ever again. So we have no idea whatever became of her. Some people were speculating, oh, did she have to go back to Earth and then attend 5 years in Starfleet Academy and then get posted to a ship as an ensign? Maybe she actually joined the science program as a scientist and was like assigned to as a scientific observer to a Starfleet ship, or maybe she was at a Starfleet outpost where they have all those scientists with those weird uniforms that Mariner liked to make fun of. She could have just, because she had all these fields, but maybe she would have to do like some more further studied, and they could, to bring her up to speed and educate her on the Federation and the existence of all the planets that they know, and she would love that. I would think that going to the academy or going to another school that teaches her about the universe and all the established planets and all these alien planets and all these alien races, and getting to learn more about them, getting to meet them, she would love that. I don't think it would be like, oh, we're going to force you to sit on this planet and go to school before you can actually let you in space. I think that's inaccurate, because whether or not she's on a planet or a starship or a starbase, she's out in this greater community of all these alien worlds and alien planets and learning about them. I don't think it would make much of a difference to her. I think she would love it either way, and she would love being able to do what she would do. It would be like a dream come true to her. So I totally disagree with the people that think it was dumb for her to stay. I think that was probably my favorite part of the whole episode. And it's funny because I'm thinking, I don't know if I mentioned this in any of my reviews on my channel before. I know I mentioned them in a couple of revisited videos I did, but I talked about this card game that I used to play in the late 90s, early 2000s, a collectible card game, kind of like Magic cards, but with Star Trek cards, the Star Trek collectible card game. And I remember her card was, you had to like put it underneath this planet, the whatever it's called. So if you know the game, there's these missions with different planets and space missions, and some of the planets have things you put under them that you gain if you complete that mission. She was one of them. That if you completed the mission of this planet, you get her, and you could put her on your crew, and she's worth 10 extra points, which usually characters were not worth points, but she was worth points if she stayed alive for the rest of the game. I kept thinking about that when I was watching this episode, because I thought that was actually an interesting use of her. But it is a shame we didn't actually see her again, except as a Romulan. It's the same actress. What is her name? Caroline Seymour or something like that. I can't remember. But anyway, Caroline Seymour. She played Romulan in Contagion, and she was back again as a different Romulan, which should have been the same Romulan, but that's another topic, in Face of the Enemy. And then she was on 2 episodes of Voyager and that stupid Victorian holodeck program, which sucked. Like it wasn't really Kate Austen, because it was like a ghost story, but it seemed to be in the style, a ghost story in the style of Kate Austen. But anyway, fuck that. But she was in that too. I think she's a really good actress. Like I think she does a really good job in this episode. But so I think she added a lot. Another thing I should mention is that the whole thing of having an episode done from the perspective of the visiting aliens was done again in the Voyager episode, Distant Voices. I think by far that episode did a much better job at it, although I still felt a bit alienated in that episode. I was still able to buy it more and get into it more. I think the characters were more well developed than they were in this episode, so I think it did a better job. The other thing I wanted to mention is Picard has a line in here saying that when he's explaining the concept of first contact to the Chancellor, he's saying that a contact with the Klingons resulted in war. And so I was saying that's what Discovery was showing us, because Discovery had, I can't remember, it's been so long since I saw the first episode, but it had Michael Burnham do some bullshit with this Klingon satellite or something, where she was it was innocent, but she ended up desecrating their religious symbol and leading to a misunderstanding, which led to war. And so I was like, oh, so that's what he was talking about. In fact, I was kind of thinking that that show Discovery was basing that episode off of this line from First Contact, where Picard says, contact with the Klingons resulted in war. But I had other people dispute that and argue, saying, but it wasn't the first contact with the Klingons, because the first contact with the Klingons was shown in Enterprise, in the first episode of Enterprise, where Archer brought this Klingon back to the homeworld, and they were kind of just like, yeah, fuck off. And Archer left, and then Archer encountered the Klingons several more times during the course of Enterprise. In fact, Archer was even put on trial and found guilty and sent to Repente, and then he escaped and was chased after by bounty hunters for escaping. They trying to recapture them, so they did have, they knew the Klingons well. So, knowing all that, then it can't be First Contact, and at least that's what people argued to me. But I think it was still, they were still considering another form of contact, which again I've gotten arguments back saying no, because we saw First Contact and it was an Enterprise. However, I watched that line again, and Picard does not say First Contact. He just says contact. Now, this is maybe quibbling, because in the context of what they're talking about, it seems like was implying it was a first contact, but I'm sorry, I'm going to be quite nerdy and precise with my language here, or with Picard's language, because he didn't say first contact. He said a contact. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a first one or a second one. It could have been a later one. And it was similar along the lines of like when Picard made contact with the Romulans in the episode The Neutral Zone, because it wasn't the first contact. They had plenty of dealings with the Romulans before, but it had been like 70 years or something, and it was the reintroduction of the Romulans. And this is the same thing in Discovery, that they had been a long time since they had any interactions with the Klingons, so it wasn't a contact. It wasn't first contact, it was a contact, and that's exactly what Picard says in this episode, so I'm sticking to that this was what Picard was talking about. But I know people are going to be like, oh no, the context is about him trying to learn more and study a species before they make first contact. But that would still apply, because they didn't understand the Klingons well enough. They didn't understand that they would be desecrating their probe, or that should have been hostile in order to appease them because they were a warlike creature. It's because they didn't have this clear understanding of the Klingons. They didn't study them before trying to make contact with them, is what broke out in war. So I say it applies. I don't care anyone else says, but anyway, because he says a contact, he never said first contact. But anyway, sorry. Anyway, I'd like to now thank my Patreon supporters for supporting me on Patreon. It's very much appreciated. It does help me continue with this channel, so I want to give a very special thanks to Brandon Neilhouse for your support for my channel. Is very much appreciated. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Antarius, Greg Marley, Francisco, Chuck Hooks, Kyrie091, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky, Matty Jester, Joel Lavals, Alessandro Miguelcio, Norman Buckwald, Stephen Kennedy, Britton Berg, Allison Fordyce, and Brandon Neil Howells. Thank you all so very much for your support. So, have a few Patreon comments for this episode. First comment is from Kyrie091, who says, first contact? More like worst contact. Now, I actually responded to him in the comments saying that there actually is an episode called Worst Contact. It's an episode of the Very Short Treks, and it's the worst Very Short Treks that has like Riker and Beverly making first contact with the alien race that's like really disgusting and eats its own boogers and smears it on the walls and whatnot, and then Riker being so disgusted he like destroys the warp drive and leaves, which is a really asshole move. So it's by far terrible, one of the worst things in Star Trek, although officially it's not canon, which is a good thing. But anyway, so worst contact already exists. So next comment is from Norman Buckwald, who says, yes, the one where Riker and Lilith bang. LOL. Seriously, I like the Prime Directive episode, and I know this one has gotten mixed reactions, but when I think of a good episode where a civilization may be ready and how the Federation would handle it, this is a great one. I liked all the characters and actors. Yes, even the evil conservative with his glasses was totally credible. And yes, we want to know what happened to Dr. Marassa, who joined Barash and the others into Asylum. Never to be seen again. I'd be fine with an appearance in Lower Decks, or Mariner making a quip about these forgotten ones. I'll give it 9. Where is that heart out of 10? Yeah, I don't think Lower Decks is ever gonna touch this, but you never know. They do some deep cuts every once in a while, so maybe they could. I would like that too. Anyway, next comment is from Stephen Kennedy, who says, I don't know when I start rating episodes of TNG. I can imagine I started rating them back in 2008 or 2011. So it was a very long time ago. I tend to rewatch the whole franchise every 3 years or so. However, I know I have watched DS9 more than any other Star Trek show. I originally rated this episode at 10, but I knew this would drop a few points. I gave Clues a 10 also, but I dropped that only by 1 point. There were 5 writers for this story. I like the scenes with Picard and the Chancellor. I guess Piller wrote those, and I guess Piller and Moore wrote the parts with Marasta. I really liked these scenes, and the dialogue was great. The hospital scenes were written by the other 3, and it shows, as they were extremely paint by the numbers. Hey, Riker, give one of your booty calls to Geordi because he needs it, and with the next episode, his character is going to get destroyed or slaughtered or even both. Marasta asked Data about Riker almost straight away. Did the Chancellor not hear her? Maybe Malcolm have bad ears because the person outside Riker's room didn't hear the booty call sounds. Riker still finds time to have sex, and he's supposed to be badly injured, and then the mob attack and almost kill him. Only 2 people now consist of a mob. He may have been kicked twice and punched twice also. I guess he lost all of his energy during the naughty with Fraser's ex-wife on Cheers. If Picard knew because he was told that a Malconian would react negatively when visited from outer space, why did he send Riker down in the first place? Would it have been better if the observers beamed to the Enterprise? So my rating is 7. I think Riker would prefer to die rather than give up on a booty call. And how many babies around the galaxy does Riker have now? Out of 10. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying they should have had that opening scene where they showed Riker beaming down. They showed what he was doing on the planet. I think this would have been good information to have. It would have made me feel more invested in the story. But, that's just me. I know everyone's going to disagree with me on this. But, yeah, as far as Riker needing his booty call, as I said, he was coerced. He didn't want to do it. Yeah, he was too badly injured to do it, and he was fearful for his life. That doesn't make someone in the mood, not even Riker. And, so he was coerced. It was quite disgusting, actually. What else? Oh, but the baby thing is a good point, though, because some people speculated, what if Riker got her pregnant? And that is totally possible. Now, here's the thing. People were talking about aliens, being able to procreate with each other, and how that sounds crazy, that sounds out there. But here's the thing, and even back in Enterprise, they said, humans would never be able to procreate with Vulcans. That would never happen. But it did happen eventually. You got Spock. But here's the thing, I don't think it's that far-fetched, because in this instant, in the universe of Star Trek, we are led to believe that aliens also look like humans with bumps on their foreheads. They're basically humanoids. So they're very similar in biology to each other. Now, granted, their organs might be in different places and their blood might be different colors, but they're very similar. So I would actually say the equivalent of different alien species breeding together or intermixing, it would be more like dogs breeding with wolves, or cats breeding with bobcats or something, or the wildcats, which happen with the what do they call them, the hybrids. They're like Bengals or whatever, where it's domestic cat breeds with. So it would be more along those lines than it would with like a giraffe breeding with an elephant or an elephant breeding with a dog or something like that. It wouldn't be like that. It would be more along those lines of, because they're similar. They're both humanoid and they're very similar. So I think it might be harder with certain species, like they mentioned the Trill and the Klingon breeding was very difficult and much harder to do. And I think even in Enterprise, it was much harder for humans to breed with Vulcans, but eventually they came up with medicines and stuff that made it easier to breed. And so that I totally buy, but I do totally buy it. So I think it's completely possible that Riker got this woman pregnant. And what if he did? Then the half human, half Makorian, or whatever they're called, would be born. And so he would be like a freak of nature to them, and maybe he would be like this alien messiah who would bring about, who would rise to power and become this religious figure. I don't know why I said that. It must be some story like that. Also, those aliens not having actual fingers and all their fingers being stuck together, like, that seems very impractical, especially for the fact that most of the equipment at the medical place and at the science place had like buttons. It seems like that's meant for people with actual digits, as they say in this episode. But anyway, so next comment is from Antarius, who says, when I was younger, I found this one boring, and even later I tended to skip this episode out of habit. But this time I came to appreciate it much more. A big plus for not having some kind of stupid space anomaly or classic threat of the week. The ambivalent ending was a nice change to the moral, usually happy ending. Some questions remain. Why can't these people detect the Enterprise in their orbit? They should have the same kind of technology. On the other hand, the Enterprise should be able to detect Riker. Shouldn't Picard, who was born and has grown up in a winery, know which is the right kind of glass for red wine? Again, a nice matte painting. My rating is an 8 out of 10. Those are actually very good points. Both of them, that even when the Enterprise was in the 60s, it was detectable by the technology of the 60s on Earth. So this is supposed to be, this race are supposed to be at technology that's beyond ours, because they're about to create warp drive. So hell yes, they should be able to detect the Enterprise in orbit. I never thought of that, but it's totally true. Now, as for the Enterprise being able to detect Riker, I've heard other people complain about this too, but there's actually been other episodes where they're unable to distinguish human life signs or different alien life signs if it's like in a very crowded area, if there's too many beings, that like it confuses the sensors, especially if they're similar, like maybe their life signs are similar to human life signs, that makes it harder to differentiate. Now, granted, they could have had a line in the episode that explained that, but it's fine. I don't think it's that big of a deal the way other people do. I think the thing about them being able to detect the Enterprise is actually a bigger deal. Anyway, next comment is from Brandon Neil Howells, who says, the problem with this episode for me is we don't see enough different points of view. Riker in the hospital, the Chancellor, the Space Minister, and the Security Minister, and Picard and Troy. I wanted to know what the ordinary Makorian in the street felt about the alien invasion. How did Marasta manage to get into Chancellor Durkan's office with Picard and Troy without being questioned or detained? I wonder if... what was it? Robert. Oh yeah, I wonder if Robert's wine might have been poisonous to Malcolm horny digestive system. Why didn't Riker use a better disguise? But worst of all, why was Riker seduced by a horny alien? He may have added something new to the Malkorian gene pool. That's what I'm saying. It is a shame that Marasta will never be seen or mentioned again. Watch Who Watches the Watchers instead, or Distant Origin, or better yet, watch the Orville episode Mad Idolatry? Something like that, and All the World is a Birth Cake. Mark Scott Zakrir, who wrote this episode, would later write Deep Space Nine's classic Far Beyond the Stars. 5 voices in a chorus out of 10. Now, first of all, I'm sorry, I gotta disagree with you about the Orville. Never watch that instead of a Star Trek episode. The Orville is just a cheap knockoff and sucks. But that's just my recommendation. You don't have to listen to me. It's okay if you want to watch it, but I wouldn't make that recommendation. Anyway, Who Watches the Watchers? Yes, I totally agree. Watch that instead. And as I said, watch Civilization instead. Watch Strange New Worlds, the episode instead, or Distant Origins. Either one of those would be better than this episode. But this episode still would be better than any episode of the Orville, in my humble. Anyway. So, why Riker didn't use a better disguise is a very good question. Maybe he wasn't... Again, this could have been explained by an opening fucking scene. Maybe he wasn't planning on being on the planet very long. If they just had a goddamn opening scene, it would have fixed all these problems. Because they changed his face. Why didn't they change his fingers? Instead, they just gave him these gloves, which all someone has to do is take off the fucking glove, and there you go. He's exposed. This is also what I said about T'Pol when she visited the planet in Civilization. They should have actually altered her ears instead of putting a freaking bandana around it, because all they had to do, take it off, and there you go, alien. Like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Anyway, but maybe the opening scene could have explained it. Maybe it could have explained that he wasn't expecting to be on the planet very long. And they were in a hurry and they didn't have time to do. See, that's when we needed a fucking opening scene. Anyways, what else was there? Let's see. Robert's wine being poisonous to the Malkonian digestive system. I will say there were scientists on the planet studying the Malkorians for 2 years. I think they would know if wine was poisonous to them by this time, and I'm sure they gave the okay to Picard for it. But again, that's kind of more a headcanon thing, but I can buy it. That's my ultimate thing about that. And also, it's kind of funny how they just, the secretary or whatever told the Chancellor, is like, Marasta's here with some friends. And he's just like, send her somewhere else, and they're to another minister or whatever. But the receptionist is like, no, she really wants to talk to you. Like, he's looking at aliens, the assistant, as he's saying this, and he's not saying, she's here with fucking aliens. Of course, I can understand him not saying this, because the Chancellor wouldn't believe him, be like, what the fuck are you talking about? And so it would be something he would need to see himself. But the receptionist, when saying that, go ahead, buzz them in, he seemed very calm. He should be freaking out. So that is a bit weird. Anyway, thank you so much, patrons, for your comments. So my rating for First Contact out of 10 is going to be a 6 good. Close to giving this episode a 7, but I don't know. I don't think it deserves a 7. As I said, I think this episode's overrated for anyone who give it an 8 or a 9. I definitely don't think it deserves that, but again, that's just my humble opinion. But, I always thought it was kind of dull. I wasn't that impressed with it. And someone mentioned earlier how there were all these writers for it. It wasn't actually the case where one writer took this part and another writer took that part. It was more of this. The script had been written and rewritten ever since season 3, and that's why we had all those writers on it. So it's not like they were all working on it all at the same time. In fact, there were different iterations of it. There was one version that was meant to be the season finale of season 4, where considering Wesley was still on the ship, and that Wesley would stay behind on this planet as their ambassador or whatever. Which, God, thank God they didn't do that. And there were many other different versions. But that's why there's so many writers, and I think it shows. And it was Michael Pillar's brilliant idea. He had to get permission from Rick Berman to make it be about from the perspective of the aliens. And as I said, I would have been okay with that had we gotten one scene at the start of the episode that set it up. As it is, I think it's too alienating, and I never got on board with these aliens. I never identified with them. I never cared about them, and I think that was a major problem. I think the format of the episode and the way it was structured was a major problem. And that didn't get me invested in the story at all. Throughout, I didn't really care what happened to these aliens because I wasn't properly introduced to them. But again, that's just me. And as I said, it wasn't a terrible episode. I'm still giving it a positive rating of a 6, even though it's the lowest positive rating I give. Because I like the interactions with Picard and the Chancellor. I like the character of Marasta. And I think the villain, even though I fucking hate him, I'm supposed to hate him, so I think they did a good job. And he does represent a lot of real-life people who would behave that way. So it was an interesting look. And it was an interesting concept. I just don't think they pulled it off. Just my opinion again. Anyway, that's it for my review of the episode First Contact. So, let's see what's coming up next on my channel, if I can get my mouse to work. Okay, so Thursday we'll be covering the next episode of Discovery, and then Saturday I'll be doing another TNG episode, Galaxy's Child. My review for that episode, that is in no way, shape, or form problematic. We'll talk about that episode. And then the following Monday, next Monday, I'll be doing my top 10 movie soundtracks of the Star Trek soundtrack, Star Trek movies soundtracks. I'll be rating the 10 Star Trek movies. I'm not doing the reboots because I'm just not familiar with the soundtracks enough. So the other 10 movies, I'll be rating them from my least favorite to my favorite. That is next Monday. So be sure to check out my channel for that as I continue to cover Star Trek and many other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.